Marcus Reed was fixing a broken air filter on level 7 of Harmony Point when the announcement came over the station's speakers. All non-essential personnel were to stay in their quarters. A Vorthik ship was requesting permission to dock. Marcus dropped his wrench. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Vorthik. They were 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor that could stop plasma bolts, and had teeth filled with venom that could kill most living things in minutes. Their home planet was so dangerous that even other predator species avoided it. The Vorthik were warriors who solved problems by fighting, and they were very good at it. So why were they coming to a peaceful trading station? Marcus picked up his tools and headed back to his small room. He had been working on Harmony Point for 3 years, fixing things that broke and keeping the station running. It was quiet work, and he liked it that way. He was not the kind of person who wanted to meet the galaxy's most feared warriors. But the Vorthik had other plans. 2 hours later, Marcus heard a knock on his door. When he opened it, he found himself looking up at a massive reptilian creature wearing what looked like ceremonial armor. The Vorthik's scales were dark green with silver edges, and its eyes were bright yellow. Marcus could see rows of sharp teeth when it spoke. "You are Marcus Reed, human maintenance technician," the creature said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like gravel in a blender. "Yes," Marcus managed to say, trying not to show how scared he was. "I am Commander Thane of the Vorthik Defense Fleet. We need to talk." Marcus stepped aside and let the massive alien into his tiny room. Commander Thane had to duck to fit through the doorway, and even sitting down, the Vorthik towered over Marcus. "We have studied your species," Commander Thane began. "Humans are weak physically. Your planet has few dangerous predators. You have no natural weapons or armor. By all logic, you should have died out long ago." Marcus nodded slowly, not sure where this was going. "But you did not die out. Instead, you became one of the most successful species in your galaxy." "We want to know why." "I'm just a maintenance guy," Marcus said. "I fix broken things. I don't know much about human success." Commander Thane leaned forward, and Marcus caught a whiff of something that smelled like sulfur and metal. "We have watched your species for 2 years. We have seen human parents with crying babies. We have seen human teachers with difficult students. We have seen human doctors with sick patients. Always, humans show something we do not understand. What's that? Patience, gentleness, the ability to care for the weak without anger." Commander Thane's voice became quieter. "We need this ability. Our species is dying." Marcus blinked. "Dying?" "But the Vorthik are the strongest species in the galaxy. Strength in battle does not solve all problems," Commander Thane said, and for the first time, the massive alien sounded tired. "Our young are failing to develop properly. For the last 50 years, fewer and fewer of our children survive to adulthood. Not because they are killed by predators or disease, but because their minds do not grow as they should." The commander stood up and began pacing around Marcus's small room, his claws clicking on the metal floor. Vorthik children go through a critical development phase when they are very young. During this time, they need constant attention and creative stimulation, or their brains will not form the connections they need for higher thinking. Without proper development, they become feral and aggressive and eventually die from neural breakdown. "That's terrible," Marcus said. "But why? Are you telling me this?" "Because our traditional methods are not working. Vorthik culture focuses on strength, competition, and survival. We raise our young to be warriors from birth. But this approach is killing them. They spend so much energy on survival that their brains cannot develop properly." Commander Thane stopped pacing and looked directly at Marcus. "We have tried everything. Our best warriors, our smartest scientists, our most experienced leaders have all failed as caregivers. Every clutch of eggs we try to raise ends in failure. We are watching our species go extinct." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. I'm sorry, but I still don't understand why you're here. We need someone who can succeed where we have failed. Someone who understands how to care for young creatures without competing with them or trying to make them stronger through hardship. Commander Thane pulled out a small device and showed Marcus a holographic display. We have studied hundreds of species across the galaxy. Only humans consistently show the traits we need. The hologram showed various scenes of humans interacting with children and animals. Marcus saw a woman reading to a group of kids, a man patiently teaching a child to tie shoes, a nurse comforting a scared patient. He also saw humans caring for animals, feeding birds, rescuing cats from trees, training dogs with treats instead of punishment. Other species either ignore their weak members or eliminate them, Commander Thane explained. Humans do something different. You protect those who cannot protect themselves. You teach without demanding immediate results. You show kindness even when there is no benefit to yourselves. But I don't know anything about raising alien children, Marcus protested. You know how to be patient. You know how to solve problems without violence. You know how to care for things that are broken. Commander Thane gestured around Marcus's room, which was filled with repaired gadgets and tools, organized with careful precision. These are the skills our young need. Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. You want me to babysit Vorthic children. We want you to save our species from extinction. The weight of what Commander Thane was asking hit Marcus like a punch to the stomach. The most dangerous predators in the galaxy were asking him, a quiet maintenance worker who fixed air filters and replaced light bulbs, to take care of their children. What if I fail? Marcus asked. What if I can't help them either? Commander Thane's expression softened slightly. Then our species dies, and it will not be your fault. It will be ours for waiting too long to ask for help. The massive alien paused. But we have studied humans carefully. We believe you have abilities that we lack. Abilities that might be the key to our survival. Marcus looked at the holographic images still floating in the air. He thought about his own childhood, about the teachers who had been patient with him when he struggled with math, about his grandmother who had taught him to fix things by showing him over and over until he understood. If I say yes, Marcus said. Slowly, what exactly would I be doing? You would come to our homeworld. You would be given 12 hatchlings to care for during their critical development period. The process takes approximately 6 months. You would have full support and protection, but the actual care of the young would be your responsibility. 12 baby Vorthic, Marcus repeated. 12 of our species' last hope, Commander Thane corrected. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Thinking. Finally, he looked up at the towering alien warrior. When do we leave? The journey to the Vorthic homeworld took 5 days on Commander Thane's ship. Marcus spent most of the time reading files about Vorthic biology and watching videos of their previous attempts at raising hatchlings. What he saw made him understand why they were so desperate. The videos showed adult Vorthic trying to care for their young using methods that would make a drill sergeant proud. Hatchlings were placed in separate enclosures and given food only after completing physical challenges. They were punished for showing weakness or fear. Adult Vorthic would roar at crying hatchlings to make them stop. When the young ones played together, adults would separate them and make them compete instead. Marcus watched hatchling after hatchling grow, more aggressive and confused as the days passed in each video. Their eyes lost focus. They stopped responding to their caregivers. Eventually, they would curl up in corners and refuse to eat until they died. The Vorthic called it neural breakdown, but Marcus recognized it as something else entirely. The hatchlings were giving up. When the ship finally arrived at the Vorthic homeworld, Marcus understood why the species had become such fierce warriors. The planet looked like it was trying to kill everything on it. The sky was orange and filled with electrical storms. Massive crystal formations jutted out of the ground, humming with energy that made Marcus's teeth ache. In the distance, he could see creatures the size of buildings hunting smaller creatures, the size of trucks. Commander Thane led Marcus to a specially built facility that looked like a fortress crossed with a nursery. The walls were thick enough to stop artillery, but inside, everything was designed for small creatures. There were climbing structures, soft surfaces, and even some toys that the Vorthek had tried to make based on human designs. "The hatchlings are in the central chamber," Commander Thane said, leading Marcus through a series of airlocks. "We have prepared everything you requested. Food, cleaning supplies, medical equipment, and entertainment materials." Marcus had asked for simple things during the journey: art supplies, building blocks, picture books, musical instruments, and games. The Vorthek had looked confused when he explained what he wanted, but they had done their best to provide everything. When they reached the central chamber, Marcus got his first look at his charges. 12 Vorthek hatchlings were scattered around a large room, each one about the size of a golden retriever, but with scales instead of fur. Their scales shifted colors as they moved, going from dark green to bright blue to deep red. Some were trying to climb the walls with their small claws. Others were fighting over scraps of food. 2 of them were curled up in separate corners, not moving at all. "They have been like this for 3 days, Commander Thane said quietly. The previous caregiver gave up after the 6th day. Before that, the longest anyone lasted was 8 days. Marcus watched the hatchlings carefully. They moved like wild animals, always alert, always ready to fight or run. Their eyes darted constantly around the room. When one of them made a noise, the others would immediately look for threats. They were living in constant fear and stress. "I need you to leave me alone with them," Marcus said. Commander Thane looked alarmed. "That is not safe. Hatchlings can be unpredictable." "They're scared," Marcus said. "Having adults around watching them makes it worse. I need to show them that I'm not a threat." After much discussion, Commander Thane agreed to leave but insisted on watching through hidden cameras. Marcus entered the chamber alone and sat down in the middle of the floor. He didn't try to approach the hatchlings or call to them. He just sat quietly and waited. The hatchlings watched him suspiciously for over an hour. Gradually they began to relax slightly. One of them, with distinctive ridge patterns on its back that reminded Marcus of a mohawk, crept a little closer. Marcus called it Spike in his mind but didn't say the name out loud. Instead of trying to touch or feed the hatchlings, Marcus pulled out a simple wooden puzzle and began working on it. The hatchlings had never seen anything like it before. They watched as Marcus fit pieces together to make a picture of a tree. When he finished, he took it apart and did it again. Spike moved closer, its scales shifting to a curious yellow color. Marcus pushed the puzzle toward the hatchling and went back to sitting quietly. After several minutes, Spike touched one of the pieces with a careful claw. When nothing bad happened, it picked up the piece and examined it. The other hatchlings began to pay attention. One by one, they crept closer to see what Spike was doing. Marcus pulled out more puzzles and scattered the pieces around. Soon, several hatchlings were trying to fit pieces together, though they didn't understand the concept yet. When feeding time came, Marcus tried something different from what he had seen in the videos. Instead of making the hatchlings compete for food, he arranged it in several piles around the room. There was enough for everyone, and the hatchlings didn't have to fight for it. At first, they still acted aggressive, snatching food and trying to guard it. But when they realized there was always more food available, they began to calm down. Marcus noticed that the 2 hatchlings who had been curled up in corners were not eating. He moved small portions of food closer to them, but didn't force them to take it. He had seen this behavior before in traumatized animals. They needed time to trust that food would always be available. By the end of his first day, Marcus had made small progress. The hatchlings were still wary of him, but they were no longer in constant panic mode. They had started to explore the puzzles and toys he had brought. Most importantly, they had begun to make soft chirping sounds to each other instead of just growls and hisses. That night, Marcus slept in a small room adjacent to the hatchling chamber. He left his door open so the young Vorthek could see him and hear his breathing. In human families, children often felt safer when they knew their caregivers were nearby. He hoped it would work the same way with Atchlings. At around midnight, Marcus woke up to find Spike standing in his doorway. The hatchling's scales were dark blue, which Marcus had learned meant confusion or uncertainty. Spike took a few steps into the room, then stopped and tilted its head. Marcus sat up slowly and spoke in a quiet voice. "Hello, Spike. Can't sleep either?" The hatchling's scales shifted to a lighter blue. It understood that Marcus was communicating, even if it didn't know the words. Marcus patted the floor next to his bed. "You can stay if you want. It's okay." Spike considered this for a long moment, then curled up on the floor near Marcus's bed. Within minutes, its scales had shifted to a peaceful green, and it was fast asleep. Marcus smiled and went back to sleep himself. It was a small start, but it was progress. For the first time in over 50 years, a Vorthak hatchling had chosen to trust instead of fear. Marcus woke up on his 8th day with the hatchlings to find that something was wrong with Spike. The young Vorthak was lying on its side, breathing heavily, and its scales had turned a dull gray color. When Marcus touched its forehead, he could feel the heat radiating from its body. The other hatchlings had gathered around Spike, making worried chirping sounds. Marcus had never seen them show concern for each other before. In all the videos he had watched, sick hatchlings were always left alone while the healthy ones stayed away to avoid catching whatever was wrong. Marcus quickly called for the medical team. 2 Vorthak doctors arrived within minutes, their scales shifting to urgent orange patterns. After examining Spike, they picked up the sick hatchling to take it to the isolation ward. "Wait," Marcus said, stepping in front of them. "Where are you taking him?" "The hatchling has fever sickness," one of the doctors explained. "It must be isolated to prevent spread to the others. This is standard procedure." Marcus looked at Spike, who was barely conscious but still trying to reach toward the other hatchlings with one small claw. "What happens to sick hatchlings in isolation?" "They recover or they die," the doctor said matter-of-factly. "We provide medical treatment. The contact with healthy hatchlings must be prevented." "No," Marcus said firmly. "I'll take care of him here." The doctors looked shocked. "That is not safe. The illness could spread to all the hatchlings." "Then I'll monitor all of them," Marcus replied. "But I'm not letting you take him away from his family." The word family seemed to confuse the Vorthak doctors. They spoke to each other in rapid clicks and growls before reluctantly agreeing to leave Spike with Marcus. They provided medicine and monitoring equipment, but they clearly thought Marcus was making a terrible mistake. Marcus set up a comfortable sleeping area for Spike near his own bed. He moved the other hatchlings' food and water closer so Spike could still see and hear them. Every few hours he would check Spike's temperature and give him medicine. When Spike was too weak to eat, Marcus would offer him small amounts of water and soft food. The most remarkable thing happened on the 2nd day of Spike's illness. Marcus was sitting beside the sick hatchling, gently stroking his scales when another hatchling approached. This one was smaller than the others, with bright yellow markings that Marcus had started calling Sunny. Sunny had always been the most timid of the group, usually hiding when Marcus came near. But now Sunny walked right up to Spike and began making soft humming sounds. Then, to Marcus's amazement, Sunny began grooming Spike's scales with its tongue, cleaning away the sweat and dirt that had accumulated during the fever. Within an hour, 3 more hatchlings had joined Sunny. They took turns grooming Spike, bringing him their favorite toys, and even sharing their food by chewing it first to make it softer. Marcus watched in wonder as the hatchlings displayed behavior that was completely unknown in Vorthik culture. The adult Vorthik monitoring the situation were equally amazed. Commander Thane arrived on the third day to see what was happening. He found Marcus surrounded by all 12 hatchlings, with Spike recovering in the center of the group while the others continued to care for him. "This is impossible," Commander Thane said quietly. "Vorthik do not behave this way. We compete. We fight. We do not help the weak." "These ones do," Marcus said, watching as Sunny carefully placed a soft cloth on Spike's forehead. "Maybe they're learning something new. But how?" Commander Thane asked. "We have tried to teach cooperation before. It always fails. Hatchlings revert to competitive behavior within days." Marcus thought about this while he watched the hatchlings interact. "Maybe you were trying to teach them with words and rules. I've been showing them with actions." Over the past week, Marcus had been doing small things that demonstrated cooperation and kindness. When one hatchling couldn't reach a toy, Marcus would help it instead of making it compete for it. When two hatchlings fought over something, Marcus would find a way for them to share or take turns. When a hatchling was sad or scared, Marcus would sit with it and offer comfort. The hatchlings had been watching everything Marcus did. They were learning not from lectures or training, but from seeing how he treated them and others. They were copying his behavior because they wanted to be like him. "You have become their pack leader," Commander Thane observed. "But instead of leading through dominance, you lead through example." Marcus nodded. "I think that's the key. They're not just learning skills or facts. They're learning how to be kind to each other because they see me being kind to them." As Spike recovered, his relationship with the other hatchlings changed permanently. They had learned to care for each other, and they didn't forget that lesson. Marcus began to see more and more cooperative behavior. Hatchlings would share food without being asked. They would help each other solve puzzles. When one hatchling was tired, others would bring it soft materials to make a comfortable bed. Marcus also introduced new activities that required teamwork. He built obstacle courses that were too difficult for any single hatchling to complete alone, but possible when they worked together. He created puzzles that required multiple hatchlings to hold different pieces at the same time. He told them stories where the characters succeeded by helping each other instead of fighting. The most dramatic change came when Marcus brought out art supplies. He had requested crayons and paper, thinking the hatchlings might enjoy drawing. What he didn't expect was that they would start drawing together, creating collaborative pictures that told stories. The first group drawing showed 12 small figures standing together around a larger figure. Marcus realized it was a picture of him with all the hatchlings. But what made it special was that each hatchling had drawn not just themselves, but also their friends. They saw themselves as part of a group, not as individual competitors. Commander Thane spent hours studying the drawing. "In 5,000 years of Vorthik history, we have no record of collaborative art," he said. "Art itself is rare among our people. But this shows they are thinking in ways we never have." Marcus was beginning to understand that the hatchlings weren't just learning new behaviors. They were developing new ways of thinking that hadn't existed in Vorthik culture before. Their brains were forming connections that their parents' brains didn't have. The change was most obvious in their communication. The hatchlings had developed a complex system of clicks, chirps, and scale color changes that allowed them to express emotions and ideas that adult Vorthik couldn't understand. They were creating their own language that included concepts like, "Let's work together," and "I want to help you," that didn't exist in traditional Vorthik speech. By the end of his third week, Marcus was watching the hatchlings play a game they had invented themselves. It involved all 12 of them working together to build towers out of blocks, with each hatchling contributing a different skill. Some were good at balancing pieces, others were good at planning the structure, and others were good at encouraging the group when things got difficult. Marcus smiled as he watched them play. They were no longer the scared, aggressive creatures he had met 3 weeks ago. They were becoming something new, something that combined the natural strength and intelligence of the Vorthek with abilities that their species had never developed before. They were learning to be strong and gentle. At the same time, the emergency alarm woke Marcus at 3 in the morning. Red lights flashed throughout the facility as the automated voice announced that a massive electromagnetic storm was heading toward their location. Marcus had been on the Vorthik homeworld for 4 weeks now, and he knew these storms were deadly serious. Commander Thane's voice crackled through the communication system. All personnel must evacuate to the deep shelters immediately. The storm will disable our protective barriers. In approximately 2 hours, Marcus looked at the 12 hatchlings who were now huddled together in the center of their chamber. Their scales had turned dark purple, which he had learned meant they were very afraid. Spike was pressed against his leg, trembling slightly. "What?" "About the hatchlings?" Marcus asked into his communicator. "Emergency protocols require all hatchlings to be secured in individual containment pods for transport," Commander Thane replied. "The pods will protect them from electromagnetic interference." Marcus had seen these containment pods during his orientation. They were small metal boxes designed for one hatchling, each with no windows and no way for the occupants to communicate with each other. The hatchlings would be separated and isolated during the most frightening experience of their young lives. "No," Marcus said firmly, "we're not separating them." "Marcus, this is not a request. The storm will be here soon. Without the containment pods, the hatchlings cannot survive the electromagnetic radiation." Marcus looked around the chamber, thinking quickly. The hatchlings had learned to work together over the past month. They trusted each other, and they trusted him. Separating them would undo all the progress they had made, and the trauma might damage them permanently. "Give me 30 minutes, Marcus said. "I have an idea." Before Commander Thane could respond, Marcus turned to the hatchlings. Over the past weeks, they had learned to understand basic human words, and they could read his emotions from his tone of voice and body language. "Listen to me," Marcus said, kneeling down so he was at their eye level. "A big storm is coming. It's going to be scary, but we need to work together to stay safe. Can you do that?" The hatchlings chirped and clicked their agreement, their scales shifting to determined orange patterns. Marcus had taught them that orange meant they were ready to face a challenge. Marcus began gathering materials from around the chamber. He took the metal mesh from the climbing structures, the conductive wire from broken electronic toys, and the reflective fabric from their bedding. Working quickly, he began weaving these materials together into a large protective shelter. "What are you doing?" Sonny asked in the simple language the hatchlings had developed. They had learned to speak basic human words mixed with their own clicks and chirps. "Building a safe nest for all of us," Marcus replied. "But I need your help." "Can you weave these wires together like I showed you in art class?" The hatchlings immediately began helping. They had learned fine motor skills by doing art projects with Marcus, and now they used those skills to help build their shelter. Some hatchlings wove wire mesh while others arranged the reflective fabric. Spike, who had recovered from his illness and was now one of the group's natural leaders, organized the others into teams. Marcus was amazed at how efficiently they worked together. Each hatchling knew what they were good at and took on the tasks that matched their skills. The smaller hatchlings worked on detailed weaving, while the larger ones handled the heavy lifting. They communicated constantly, sharing information and coordinating their efforts. Within 20 minutes, they had built a protective dome large enough for all 13 of them. The shelter was lined with metal mesh to deflect electromagnetic radiation, and the reflective fabric would help dissipate any energy that got through. It wasn't perfect, but it was much better than the individual containment pods. "Everyone inside," Marcus said as the first lightning flashes appeared in the distance. The hatchlings quickly crawled into the shelter, arranging themselves in a circle with Marcus in the center. They had learned that being close together made them feel safer. The storm hit with incredible force. The building shook as electromagnetic pulses hammered the facility. All the lights went out, and the air recycling system stopped working. Marcus could hear metal groaning and glass breaking somewhere in the distance. Inside their shelter, the hatchlings huddled together in the darkness. Marcus could feel them trembling, but they weren't panicking. Instead, they were doing something he had never seen before. They were humming together, creating a soft rhythmic sound that seemed to calm everyone down. "Where did you learn to do that?" Marcus whispered. "We made it up," Spike replied quietly. "When one of us is scared, we all hum. It makes the scared feeling go away." Marcus smiled in the darkness. The hatchlings had invented their own way of dealing with fear, and it was working. They were supporting each other through the crisis instead of each fighting their terror alone. Storm raged for 6 hours. During that time, Marcus heard terrible sounds from outside their shelter. Metal structures collapsed, glass shattered, and the building's protective systems failed one by one. But inside their improvised dome, the hatchlings remained calm and safe. When the storm finally passed, rescue teams found them still huddled together, all alive and unharmed. Commander Thane was the first to reach them, and Marcus could see the amazement in his yellow eyes. "Impossible," the commander said. "No one has ever survived a storm like that without proper containment pods. How did you do it?" Marcus looked at the hatchlings, who were now excitedly telling each other about their adventure. Their scales were bright yellow with happiness, and they were chattering in their complex language about how they had worked together to stay safe. "We didn't survive it," Marcus said. "We succeeded at it. There's a difference." The rescue teams examined the shelter the hatchlings had built. The electromagnetic readings inside showed that the improvised structure had actually provided better protection than the standard containment pods would have. The collaborative design had distributed the electromagnetic stress more evenly, and the materials had been arranged in a way that no single engineer had thought to try. "They built this themselves?" one of the technicians asked. "We all built it together," Spike corrected, his scales flashing with pride. Commander Thane spent the rest of the day reviewing recordings of the storm. The hidden cameras had captured everything, showing how the hatchlings had worked together under pressure, how they had supported each other emotionally, and how they had created solutions that adult Vorthek had never considered. "They are not just surviving," he told Marcus. "They are thinking in ways we never have. They are solving problems we cannot solve," Marcus nodded. "That's what happens when you teach someone to work together instead of compete. They become stronger than anyone could be alone." That night, as the hatchlings settled down to sleep, they arranged themselves in their usual circle with Marcus in the center. But this time, something was different. They were no longer just a group of young creatures that Marcus was carrying. They had become a family that faced challenges together. Spike looked up at Marcus with bright, intelligent eyes. "Tomorrow, can we build something else together?" Marcus smiled. "Tomorrow, we can build anything you want." 6 months had passed since Marcus first arrived on the Vorthek homeworld. Today was the day he would find out if his work had truly succeeded. The hatchlings were about to undergo their final development tests, scans that would show whether their brains had formed the neural pathways necessary for full intelligence. Marcus sat in the medical facility waiting room, more nervous than he had ever been in his life. Through the viewing window, he could see the 12 hatchlings being examined by a team of Vorthek doctors and scientists. The young Vorthek had grown considerably over the past months, now standing nearly 4 feet tall with scales that had developed the full color-changing abilities of adults. Commander Thane sat beside Marcus, equally tense. "In all our history, no hatchling group has achieved more than 60% neural development," he said quietly. "Most recent groups have achieved less than 30% before failing completely." The hatchlings seemed calm during their tests, which surprised the medical team. Usually, young Vorthek became aggressive and frightened when separated from their caregivers for medical procedures. But these hatchlings cooperated with the doctors, helped each other when needed, and even comforted the ones who seemed nervous. Dr. Vale, the chief medical officer, approached Marcus with a puzzled expression on her scaled face. "The preliminary results are unusual," she said. "We need to run the tests again to make sure our equipment is working properly." "What kind of unusual?" Marcus asked, his heart racing. "The neural pathway development appears to be far beyond normal parameters. If these readings are correct, these hatchlings have achieved cognitive development levels that exceed most adult." Vorthek, Marcus felt relief flood through him, but Dr. Vale held up a clawed hand. "However, that should be impossible. We need to conduct deeper scans to understand what we are seeing." The advanced testing took another 3 hours. During this time, Marcus watched the hatchlings through the window. Even separated for medical procedures, they maintained connection with each other through their complex language of clicks, chirps, and color changes. Spike kept checking on the smaller hatchlings, while Sunny organized games to keep everyone entertained during the long wait. When the final results came back, Dr. Vale called a meeting with the entire Vorthek Council. Marcus was invited to attend, along with Commander Thane and several other military leaders. The council chamber was a massive room carved from living rock, with seats arranged in ascending circles around a central platform. "The results are unprecedented," Dr. Vale announced. To the assembled Vorthek leaders, these 12 hatchlings have not only achieved full neural development, they have developed capabilities that we have never seen before in our species. She activated a holographic display showing brain scans. The areas responsible for creative problem-solving show activity levels 3 times higher than normal adult patterns. The sections that control empathy and social cooperation have developed neural pathways that simply do not exist in typical Vorthek brains. Most remarkably, they have created entirely new neural networks that appear to be dedicated to collaborative thinking. The council members shifted in their seats, their scales flickering with colors that Marcus had learned indicated deep confusion and amazement. "Furthermore," Dr. Vale continued, "their intelligence tests show results that place them in the top 1% of all tested Vorthek. They solved problems that normally stump our greatest scientists, and they did so by working together in ways that no Vorthek has ever demonstrated." Elder Kron, the oldest member of the council, stood up slowly. "Are you telling us that this human has created a generation of Vorthek that are superior to us?" "I am telling you that these hatchlings represent an evolutionary leap for our species," Dr. Vale replied. "They possess all of our traditional strengths, but they have developed additional capabilities that could transform our entire civilization." Commander Thane requested permission to speak. "Council members, I have observed these hatchlings for 6 months. They have solved engineering problems that our best technicians could not handle. They have created art, music, and literature unlike anything in our culture. They have developed technologies by combining their individual skills in ways we never imagined possible." He activated another display showing some of the projects the hatchlings had worked on during their final weeks of development. There were architectural designs for buildings that could withstand electromagnetic storms better than current structures. There were new communication systems that could work across multiple species. There were even early designs for spacecraft that incorporated cooperative control systems. "They think differently than we do," Commander Thane explained. "Where we see competition, they see opportunities for collaboration. Where we see individual achievement, they see group success. They have kept all of our species' strengths but added capabilities that make them far more effective." Elder Kron looked directly at Marcus. "Human, what have you done to our young?" Marcus stood up, feeling very small among the massive Vorthek. "Leaders, I taught them the same thing human parents teach their children. I showed them that they were valued not for what they could achieve alone, but for what they could contribute to their family and community. I taught them that taking care of each other made everyone stronger. But how? Elder Kron pressed. We have tried to teach cooperation before. It never works. You tried to teach it as a strategy or a technique, Marcus replied. I taught it as a way of life. Every day, I showed them through my actions that caring for others was more important than competing with them. They learned not because I told them to, but because they wanted to be like someone who cared about them. The council spent hours debating the implications of what they had discovered. Some members worried that these new Vorthik would be too different from their ancestors. Others argued that this evolution was necessary for their species' survival. Finally, Elder Kron called for a decision. The question before us is simple. Do we accept these changes and learn from them, or do we reject them and continue our current path toward extinction? The vote was unanimous. The Vorthik would embrace the new way of raising their young, with Marcus serving as an advisor to train other caregivers in human methods. As the meeting ended, Marcus was approached by representatives from 7 other species who had observed the proceedings. Word of his success had spread throughout the galaxy, and they wanted human advisors for their own child-rearing programs. 6 weeks later, Marcus stood in the departure bay of the Vorthak facility, preparing to return to Harmony Point. The 12 hatchlings, now officially recognized as the first graduating class of the new Vorthak Academy, had come to see him off. Spike, now taller than Marcus and bearing the ceremonial markings of a junior scientist, approached with something in his claws. We made this for you, he said, offering Marcus a crystal sculpture. The sculpture showed a human figure surrounded by young creatures of various species, all working together on a project that reached toward the stars. At the base, inscribed in both Vorthak symbols and human letters, were the words, "To the one who taught us that strength comes from caring." Thank you, Marcus said, accepting the gift. But remember, I didn't teach you anything new. I just helped you discover what was already inside you. Sunny stepped forward, her scales shimmering with emotion. Will you come back to visit us? Of course, Marcus replied. But you won't need me anymore. You've learned to take care of each other. As Marcus's transport ship lifted off from the Vorthik homeworld, he looked down at the planet that had seemed so hostile 6 months ago. Now he knew it was home to a species that was learning to be both fierce and gentle, strong and caring. Commander Thane's voice came through the ship's communication system. Marcus, the council has asked me to give you a message. You have been granted the title of Honorary Vorthik, the first non-Vorthik in our history to receive this honor. You will always have a home among us. Marcus smiled as he watched the planet grow smaller in the distance. He was returning to his quiet job fixing things on Harmony Point, but he knew his life would never be the same. The galaxy's deadliest creatures had asked him to babysit, and in saving their children, they had discovered that the greatest strength wasn't in what you could destroy, but in what you could help grow. And across the galaxy, other species were beginning to learn the same lesson.